Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by Adam Nicholas from WhatCulture. We have just finished watching NXT TakeOver 31, and this is what went down. And Adam Nicholas, I don't want to get too bogged down in what happened right at the end of this pay-per-view, but it was a confusing ending to what was a great show.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. It was what I would describe as a flat ending to a show, which, as far as I'm concerned, felt like a pretty inflated, in a good way, show. Like, everything seemed to hit for me the way I wanted it to. But I think just with all the expectation that was going into this, the ending post-match certainly maybe felt like a little bit of a letdown, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where everyone's sort of fantasy booking maybe got away from them, and then when whatever WWE decided to do happened, you thought, well, this is what I imagined in my head. I thought there was going to be some sort of Undisputed Era split if Kyle O'Reilly didn't win the title. But it wasn't all bad news. Some nice surprises on the night, especially concerning NXT's Insurgent, but we will get to that in due course. Let's start with the opening match of the night. It was the NXT North American Championship match. Damien Priest versus Johnny Gargano. And this, for me, served as a reminder as to why Damien Priest is NXT North American Champion.
Absolutely, and I think it would have been, going into this match, I felt like it would have been a bit of a shame for Priest to have lost the belt so early. I know there was the temptation, the power couple potentially on the rise, but I think ultimately we saw Priest prove why he is definitely the champ and why he's the right guy for right now. We've got some great people at the very top of the card, and Priest is certainly the top of the middle of the card, exactly where we should be right about now.
We always say, Johnny Takeover, and, if you want a not dependable, that's really patronising. If you want a spectacular match to start off a pay-per-view with, you put Johnny Gargano in it. But let's not forget the role that Damien Priest played in here. No. Yes, of course, Gargano ate a razor's edge on the apron fairly early on in this match. But that spot where Priest flipped outside the ring and Johnny Gargano just pulled some security in the way is something that's going to stay with me for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, it was perfect. These two, putting them together was always going to be great, because Gargano's the little guy, Priest's the big guy. You're going to get a bunch of combinations there. But I mean, Priest is just as agile, if not more so, than Gargano in terms of what he can do, and I think we saw it in this match. The power versus the brains and the quickness of Gargano. But he's just he's like a snivelling little wriggly heel, Johnny, isn't he? He knows exactly how to get on your nerves, exactly how to wind you up. And to be fair, these are technically two heels going for a match, but it certainly didn't feel that way, did it, in this match?
No, exactly. And when you see smaller wrestlers taking on bigger wrestlers, they talk about chopping down the tree. They don't really talk about kicking the tree in the bollocks, though.
Hey, I think it's a better way to chop the tree. I think ultimately kick him in the sap and see what happens. And I'll tell you what, it was effective. Obviously, we knew we were going to get some sort of shenanigans. Johnny, just in WWE land, of course, isn't big enough to beat Priest by straight up technique, shall we say. Bit of a distraction going on there. Managed to kick him straight in the stots. And for a little bit there, Wilbourn, we thought maybe we were going to get a title change.
Yeah, big super kick after he got Priest back in the ring after that. But in the end, as Gargano went for one final beat, Priest blocked it and hit the Reckoning whilst Gargano was tangled up in the ropes, which effectively meant Johnny Gargano got spiked on his head, which looked good. It sounds quite ghoulish for me to say good for that. But yeah, it was a really memorable ending to that match. Priest retaining the NXT North American Championship, and not to give away what happened a little bit later on, but we had a tweet later on from Johnny Gargano who said, "We're better than this, we're bigger than this." A hint at a move to the main roster with the draft coming up this week, do you reckon?
Certainly at the right time to be sending a tweet like that out. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he knew what he was doing, I should point out, in that department, because Johnny Gargano isn't daft, but also, what is there left to do? We mentioned this on the podcast on Friday on WhatCulture. Johnny Gargano has done everything in NXT. The Triple Crown, first ever Triple Crown winner. If things aren't going right, then maybe the brand of Johnny and Candice could be going somewhere else.
Next up, I think it's fair to say the match that most fans were the most apprehensive about. Kushida versus Velveteen Dream. But Kushida's on a roll.
Kushida is on a roll. They've managed to turn around, I think, which is interesting to see, because they've obviously brought him in as this he was just very much happy to be there, really happy to be the wrestler, happy to have made it to NXT, happy, but we weren't really getting to see the Kushida we know exists and we've seen in New Japan, we've seen elsewhere, but now we're getting at the vicious side of him, and this whole match was kind of designed to kind of emphasise that a lot, as we've seen in the previous week's build-up towards it, and he just delivered in space, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that this sort of played into the finish. Obviously did when it comes to the submission, but in terms of, well, what's one of Velveteen Dream's big moves? It's the Purple Rainmaker. So if you target that arm, but it felt like, no, that was just a byproduct that his arm hurt when he hit the Purple Rainmaker, because Kushida, the spot where Velveteen Dream got posted and Kushida just went, I guess I'll just keep doing that then.
I'll just keep
was kind of a summation of just how brutal he was willing to get in this match.
He worked the arm so well. I mean, it's like Kushida's whole offense is, of course, leading towards that hoverboard lock, and it was really well done. Like, again, another match where you saw the dynamic of height coming into play, but this one wasn't, like you say, not so much the chopping down of the tree rather than ripping the branches off the trees up her body, I guess. And I'm pleased I'm pleased Kushida isn't losing the momentum that I think they've given him up to this point. He really has earned it, and sort of that vicious side coming out in this match was a delight to watch.
You and I were certainly already fantasy booking Kushida versus Finn Balor potentially down the line. I say apprehension. I feel I should sort of qualify that with. I think everyone has this, or a certain proportion of the WWE universe, myself and yourself included, has this unease around Velveteen Dream right now due to the allegations that are occurring with him. And yeah, it just felt like, especially Velveteen Dream getting a victory over Kushida would have just completely derailed what was such an exciting prospect. But as you say, in the end, despite the fact that Dream got some near falls hitting the Purple Rainmaker, for example, or the Dream Valley Driver, it was Kushida who got the victory. He had a hoverboard locked in for a long time, and it looked like Velveteen Dream was going to fight out of it. He hit a Dream Valley Driver, and Kushida just held onto the hoverboard lock, got a submission victory, and then attacked Velveteen Dream. Post-match, mixed opinions in our comment section for our live stream. Some people saying, well, that's just writing Velveteen Dream off, because I know that one of the last things I saw him mouth was that he couldn't feel his arm, for example. Or some people saying this is a heel turn for Kushida. How did you take it?
It's hard to know really with what the direction's going to be here. I think the end of this, I wanted to make sure that Kushida was coming out of it with the rub from the match, essentially, which he has done. I think they've enhanced the fact that I'm not sure about heel turn. I feel like just more vicious side of him coming out. Yes, it was heelish tactics, obviously, to do and like try and rip someone's arm off after the match. It definitely fits the bill. It could write Dream out. Could it be Dream heading to the main roster? Could it be Dream just taking some time away? Look, the elephant in the room is very simple. As we mentioned, Velveteen Dream was named in the speaking out allegations, as Michael Hamlet would put it in the simplest terms. We're not here to condemn anybody. We don't have the facts. We know that's what we do know. What I do know is I find it extremely difficult to watch the matches. It distracts from what I'm trying to enjoy, and I don't think the second putting him in a position that's elevated on the card in any way, shape or form is a good idea until they get some sort of conclusive result from the end of this. And I think as a result, giving that match to Kushida, giving him the rub and giving him all of the spotlight in this was the perfect move, in my opinion.
Before we get to the next match, we had a major announcement concerning Halloween Havoc returning. It is going to be the October 28th episode of NXT TV. It's going to be hosted by Shotzi Blackheart, and we might be getting a giant bloody pumpkin. A
huge old pumpkin, and I tell you what, this is great news, isn't it? We did actually flirt with the idea there could be another pay-per-view before the one in December, and sure enough, here we are. Like, it might not be the one we thought it was going to be. Halloween Havoc's great though. Another sort of nostalgic throwback. But interestingly, as was pointed out in our comments section during the live stream, maybe nicer to see it done this way, where they're going to aim towards a pay-per-view rather than try and do a branded two-part episode of like counter-programming to go up against AEW, essentially. Hopefully, this is exactly what it's the branding certainly going to be there. I think it was in first time in 20 years, 25 years, something like that. Yeah. It's a lot of years, but I think everyone's happy to see that back. It will fill everybody full of nostalgia, and as long as it's there for a structural purpose rather than anything else, I think it'll be great.
And we may well need it 3 days after Hell in a Cell. Let's move on to the Cruiserweight Championship match. This was one of the front runners for match of the night for us for most of the evening.
It was brilliant, this. I mean, if you ever have any doubts about how talented the wrestlers in the Cruiserweight division are in WWE, you do not need to have them anymore, because they constantly deliver whenever they're given a chance, especially if it's a match that gets to go 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And we know how talented Swerve is. We know how talented Santos Escobar is, who, I should point out, the package of him and El Legado del Fantasma, they have just been great so far. The story here was excellent. We really thought this was going to be the night for Swerve Scott, and he put in a hell of a performance. These two, genuinely, it was move for move for move for me. It was a constant move around. They had it between the two of them, just a stunning offense from both, but it didn't quite end the way we thought it was going to, did we?
No, exactly. I mean, you will probably get the accusation from AEW hardcores, for example, that this is just finisher spamming, but it really felt that it match built and built and built, like you said. We had the involvement of Wilde and Mendoza as part of El Legado del Fantasma, of course. They ran down to try and interfere, and you thought, oh god, here we go. Then Shante Adonis showed up to try and even the odds, and basically Shante Adonis and Swerve chased off Wilde and Mendoza, and then when Swerve got back in the ring, I don't know how to put this, he was reminded he was in a match in the most brutal way possible. Is that fair to say?
Brutal, but aesthetically pleasing way possible, I think it's fair to say. He went to do his, when he jumps through the ropes and rolls up to bounce up and then to strike, and he got kicked so perfectly by Escobar right here. It was as well timed and as well executed as, and we will mention it again, I'm sure, later on, the Adam Cole Ricochet spot, the backflip into the kick. It was akin to that, genuinely, it really was. And this was maybe not the start, but it was certainly in the midst of a chunk of wonderful offense that was leading towards the end of the match. Genuinely, they really amped this one up for me. I know people might accuse this finisher spam. It's not what I felt that was. I felt they built this match up well, and these are two extremely talented guys in a cruiserweight title match. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to give you wild matches, wild moves that you're not going to see elsewhere, and that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point exactly. Swerve later on got back what he was given, nailing a house call kick to Santos Escobar's head. He nailed a 450 splash, and we thought that was it, but no, Santos Escobar kicked out at 2. This is awesome chance, which was partially the 50 fans or whatever they had in attendance. By the way, we haven't even mentioned how spectacular the CWC looked.
We haven't, and we should, because it looks brilliant. It's the fresh lick of paint I think they've needed for a little while. The funny thing is with Full Sail University, it's such the history there is great, like with NXT, but you need the fans there, man. You can't replace that. Full Sail is wonderful, but it isn't anything incredible to look at particularly. It's the fans that make Full Sail so great, and I think they've recognised that. And this revamped Performance Centre, which is now being called the Capital Wrestling Centre, is just brilliant, like a visual masterpiece. Like the way it's now fully surrounded by essentially a Titantron that just goes all the way around in full, not like the Thunderdome where they've done it in layers. This is literally just big screen all the way around. It looks amazing. They put guardrails, or like barbed wire fence, I guess if you want to call it that, around,
like a mesh.
Yeah, mesh around the side, like a cage essentially, but with plexiglass behind it, obviously, so it actually works as a little set piece. The giant X from that WrestleMania 33 is now a full-time part of the set. It just looks great. It really is the fresh lick of paint it needed, and it just added to the atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it looked amazing from the word go. I mean, just from Damien Priest's entrance, you suddenly sat up and really paid attention. But we haven't finished with the Swerve Escobar match.
Of
They were dangling on the apron when Swerve got knocked backwards and hit the back of his head or his neck, I think Wade Barrett was saying, on the exposed turnbuckle, which happened earlier on in the match. That allowed Escobar to hit his double underhook facebuster for the 1-2-3. Really interesting to see where both men go after this. Next up, it was another match that I was gambling on a championship changing hands, it being Eoshirai versus Candice Larae, and another great match.
I think this might have been the match where the expectation was high, because the last time we saw them, they were the best match on a very, very average TakeOver Toronto card. There's a lot of story history there between the two, although the dynamic has certainly changed a lot since the last time we saw it. And with Johnny losing out earlier in the night, I felt like almost 100% sure that Candice was probably not going to come away with the belt, and I wouldn't have really felt like that was the move for me. But these two put on a hell of a match, and the one thing I noticed most about this match is just, I guess this is how it works when you're working against your mates, but the absolute velocity that they were hitting each other with moves in this match was something else.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced it earlier on with the Cole Ricochet spot. When they did this, it was just, I'll vaguely kick you really hard in the chest.
Oh, I mean, Io Shirai doesn't mess around when she kicks people at the best of times. And this was, Candice was doing the lion salt off the thing, man. Oh, good Lord. The kick, it looked rough. It didn't look as clean. It didn't look as neat as any of it, but it looked so impactful. And the amount of times they kneed and kicked and elbowed and forearmed each other in this match, they didn't take anything off it. They weren't playing, like, they weren't messing. They were hitting each other as hard as humanly possible.
But as you would assume in a match where Johnny Gargano could get involved in cause shenanigans, he did. There was a slight ref bump earlier on. He got caught, I think, whilst Candice LeRae was just wildly swinging. And then a bump I know you want to talk about here. Shirai went for the moonsault. Candice LeRae got her knees up. Shirai went flying, as then did the referee, Adam Nicholas.
Two of the best ref bumps I remember seeing in recent memory. Like, genuinely, there's a lot of farcical ones that go on the main roster. These just look so fluid and they looked so believable. Like, the first one, maybe less so, I would say. A flailing arm from Candice, which ended up smacking the referee in the face. But the second one, Io Shirai, from the moonsault, like, off the top, Candice obviously getting the feet up into the chest of Shirai, and as she rolls backwards, boots the referee out of the ring. Excellent execution, genuinely. Something that Bret Hart himself, I'm sure, would have been proud of. But just brilliant stuff, believable, and then obviously leaves the door open for Johnny to come in. And you want to talk about great execution. You've never seen execution like, well, you probably have, but this was Gargano running to the ring in his referee's top on, that he had on back to front, I should point out, as he, like, the stupidest run out into the ring ever. The guy's a dork. He finally understands it. He's making it work. He's a heel, and this was amazing.
He not only went out there in his Inside Out Newcastle kit, but he then tried to fast count a match that he wasn't the referee for.
Yeah.
Io Shirai still kicked out. And then, in the midst of the referee recovering, he gets the belt, hands it to Candice LeRae, who nails Io Shirai with it. And you think, oh my God, they're going to steal this. But Io Shirai kicked out again. And Gargano, what can I describe? Just threw it a strop. That's something my niece and nephew would do if you said, I'm sorry, that's enough chocolate for you to say. In the end, Candice LeRae thinks she's got the match, completely in hand. But it's Io Shirai. She rocks her. She hits a super Spanish fly from the top rope and then nails the moonsault that she's missed a couple of times earlier on in this match. 1, 2, 3. Io Shirai retains, but it's all about the post-match as well. Of course.
Hey, two big post-match treats for us here, because not only we had the looming presence of an unknown insurgent to come. We'll get to that in a second. I'll let you cover that one. But the first one we got was a video package that included, or sort of certainly a video message, I should say, that included Toni Storm, who was turned back up to say that she is on her way back to NXT. And to be honest, a great addition to the NXT roster she will be. She's fantastic, Toni Storm. We haven't really seen a ton of her since she dropped the belt to Kaylee Ray, and she's been. She's putting some performances in both NXT UK, and the Mae Young Classic. which all lead to her being one of the best. She was a great NXT UK Women's Champion too. Having her in this stacked division, this already stacked division, can only be a good thing. But maybe it's not the end of the stacking, I think, Mr. Wilbourn. Is that fair to say?
I think it's a very fair thing to say. Yes, we found out the insurgent immediately after this, and no offense, but thank goodness it wasn't Bo Dallas. It was, in fact, Ember Moon. She is back in NXT. She has a badass haircut to go with it, and she just looks so happy to be back as a part of NXT. It's been a rough time for her, what with injuries and just being badly booked, in my opinion, on the main roster. I always hate to say main roster when we're talking about NXT, but still, great to have her in there. And Eoshirai suddenly gone from like, well, that's that taken care of. I've beaten Dakota Kai, I've beaten Shotzi Blackheart, I've beaten Candice LeRae. All I've really got is Rhea Ripley. Oh no, wait, Ember Moon's here and Toni Storm, and it's just such an exciting time to watch women's wrestling in NXT. Oh, and women's wrestling across the WWE, I should probably say.
Yeah, across the board, isn't it? Absolutely across the board. We needed some fresh faces in there, though, and I think if the end game is indeed for Io and Ripley to eventually have a rematch at some point, we still need a few people to get some brilliant matches in there to take us along the road. Toni Storm and Ember Moon, yes, please. I think they're fantastic additions, and I still would say there's people in that division like Shotzi Blackheart, like Dakota Kai, who could go for another round with Eoshirai, and I would not be against it.
No, absolutely, and some great up-and-coming talents. We were talking about on the stream, Xia Li, Caden Carter, Casey Catanzaro, for example. It's just a wonderful time to be a fan of that division, for example. Right, let's move on to the main event, Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor. A match that I think I hurt after watching, let alone those two.
I think I was bleeding from the inside by the end of this match. We talked about strong and heavy hitting that was happening in the Candice LeRae and Eoshirai match. This was no different. This was a match that's been coming. This match, as they showed us in the video package, has been on its way for quite some time. They've missed each other at various different brands across the world, but they essentially brought a New Japan style, strong style match to NXT between two very, very capable wrestlers. And this was a night that Kyle O'Reilly, I think, knew he had a chance to shine, and for my money, absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was.
Yeah, the bit with him, and this is not to build it down to one moment, but him begging off when Finn Balor just nailed him in the ribs with a kick. That was something that it's just relatable, isn't it? I suppose in terms of, I've never wrestled, but you just think, well, yeah, if I was in the middle of a fight with Finn Balor and he kicked me in the ribs, I'd probably say, I think that's enough for me.
I mean, I know people are into their wrestling on our channel, maybe less so into the UFC, but we saw it in the light heavyweight clash between Jan and Dominic Reyes.
Mm-hmm.
Kept getting kicked in the side. That hurts, man. There's no two ways about it. I don't care if wrestling is quote-unquote fake or not, but getting kicked hurts. That really hurts. And I think the way the two of them work, Balor working Kyle O'Reilly's ribs throughout this match, Kyle O'Reilly working Balor's knee throughout this match, of course, just making perfect sense. Kyle not having any mobility stops him from doing a lot of things he wants to do. Kyle taking away Balor's knee, in theory, stops the coup de grace, Wilbourn.
In theory, yes. I mean, that there was a bit earlier with kickouts from like a huge brain buster from Kyle O'Reilly and a 1916 from Finn Balor. But yes, there's a bit where Finn Balor looked like he was taking control, and then Kyle O'Reilly hit a couple of genuinely wince-inducing dragon screws whilst Finn Balor's leg is tied up in the ropes. And this is a match where also we should mention very early on, Kyle O'Reilly was targeting the shoulder that Finn Balor separated all those years ago at SummerSlam. Of course, just really clever work and booking. I want to give credit to everyone in this one, really. And yeah, it looked as though we were saying this ourselves, that even though Finn Balor was able to hit the odd stomp every single time, it was almost taking as much out of him as it was taking out of O'Reilly. And there was that moment where Kyle O'Reilly got a heel hook submission in, and then Finn Balor was kicking him away, and then Kyle O'Reilly got that leg as well, and you thought, well, he's trapped. And a lot of these times, and I'm not saying that we didn't think, oh, well, obviously Finn's going to get to the ropes here, but a lot of these times when you see a wrestler crawling to the ropes, you just think, all right, he just trying to get to the ropes. He made this look like a crawl to an oasis in the desert. It was like a million miles, that bottom rope for him to get to it was, and you saw the reaction from the crowd when he finally did get there. I thought that was a great piece of work from both men.
Yeah, it just felt like a match full of high IQ, didn't it? There was a lot of that, like even the spot where O'Reilly was going for the armbar and Balor was like holding on by a finger and they was slipping away one by one till he had the last one and he ended up getting it pulled away. It was really, really great stuff. The striking, Kyle O'Reilly's striking, it's great anyway, but I just think this was a real chance to showcase, and they just did not. It just added the kind of feel to it that I remember from Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura in TakeOver Dallas, where they were just hitting each other with kicks to the face. Balor kicked O'Reilly in the face so many times in this match and properly kicked him. There was no messing around. It reminded me a la Nakamura and Zayn from TakeOver Dallas. You could just tell they wanted to provide the fans that kind of match, and they did, and it was all the better for it. Just blunt force trauma to each other's bodies in every way, shape and form, and I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. Towards the end, O'Reilly hit a suplex on Balor, who immediately just leapt up and nailed a double stomp to Kyle O'Reilly's chest. And there's a bit in the corner, and Kyle O'Reilly just twats Finn Balor right in the face with a knee, causes his mouth to bleed. Kyle O'Reilly's mouth's been bleeding from about 10 minutes in, I assume because of internal bleeding, who knows. But in the end, Balor picks himself up, hits Kyle O'Reilly with a coup de grace, and he remains NXT champion. I mean, he looks like he's been in the wars, I think it's fair to say, but both men sort of beat respect into each other. There's a lovely shot of Finn Balor helping Kyle O'Reilly up off the floor, and you think, right, here come the Undisputed Era, what are we going to get here? And it was just a bit of a muddled ending to the show. Like, literally, you take that away, and I probably won't remember this in a week or so, depending on how the storyline goes, of course. It felt like a bit of a damp squib of an ending after a really enjoyable show, because maybe, like I said, people have fantasy booked it in their heads, because rather than a big Undisputed Era split, we just got Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly looking at Rich Bloody Holland. He's from bloody Leeds. He's in danger of becoming the Yorkshire Mason Ryan, in my opinion, but he just had a beaten up Adam Cole that he'd carried to the ring. At least it wasn't Dexter Lumis. And he chucked him over the barricade, looked, and then pissed off. And then down came Roderick Strong and Bobby Fish, and they went, what's going on? And then the show ended.
Yeah, I guess this is probably a little bit on us, and I guess it's also probably a little bit on WWE on NXT too, because I don't know. I don't think anybody had this on the bingo card, and probably for the right reasons, because Rich Holland, and I can only speak for myself here, but he's not my taste at the moment. I don't really think there's a lot going on there. I certainly don't think he's at the level where we should be taking the spotlight away from an otherwise incredible match between Balor and Kyle O'Reilly. The night where really we should have been celebrating the launching of Kyle O'Reilly, in my opinion. And we are finishing on a man who's had nothing to do with literally any of this. Now, I get it. Wrestling works like that. And sometimes this plays into a greater story. Sometimes you get a shock because it's the first of the thing. And then the story ends up being amazing. And whoop-de-friggin' do. But unfortunately, right now, this didn't feel like the right move for me personally. I just felt like a lot of people were going like, what? Why Ridge Holland? This felt like when Eric Rowan turned up to interfere in the Daniel Bryan AJ Styles match, and it was like, what? And I guess if you want to look at it that way, that did end up working out pretty well. So maybe we need to trust the process here. I know how I feel about Ridge Holland at the moment, and it's no, I don't want him at the top of my card or in the main storyline views just yet. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he's there at all. He's nowhere near, in my opinion. He's not even close enough to Damien Priest, in my opinion. Never mind getting to the top of the card. And although saying that, it may just be Undisputed Era he's going to feud with, not necessarily Finn Balor or anything like that. So whatever. Ultimately, to give you the shorter version, this was not what we all had dreamt up in our heads and did not have it on our bingo cards. I think it's fair to say.
No, exactly. And slightly took the spotlight away from Kyle O'Reilly, who had not a breakout moment because he's been great for ages, but, a real showcase of his singles ability. And yes, people will point to the Ryan Satin interview where literally Kyle O'Reilly mentions Ridge Holland, but I want to talk more about Kyle O'Reilly than Ridge Holland right now. I think it's fair to say. Match of the night for you?
Match there for me. I'm biased. I have to be honest. I was looking forward to Kyle's singles match with Balor, and it didn't disappoint for me. I would say Swerve and Santos Escobar a close second, because I really did enjoy that match as well, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, I really enjoyed every match on this card, but like you say, I think you and I were both in agreement that they'd have to do something pretty terrible for us to pick O'Reilly and Balor as the match of the night. But do let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. Lots of stuff to talk about this week, not just the fallout from this, but we've got the draft coming on Friday for WWE, and things are going to get mixed up, I sense. But anyway, this has been our TakeOver 31. What went down? Let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, where you can follow both of us. You can follow Adam Nicholas at
It's Adam Nicholas, and you can also follow Adam Wilbourn at
Adam Wilbourn. Follow us all at WhatCultureWWE, as I said. But for now, as I said, this has been TakeOver 31. What went down? My thanks, Adam Nicholas. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.